Hi, everyone. Welcome to Royal Black and Elite. I'm Lady Trinette Wilson, your lecturer and social historian. You know, Saturdays I do Culture Saturday. And today, if you woke up, you may have seen on the news where the United States went in, as you see here on the screen. Now, there has been a lot of back and forth with Venezuela and the U.S. over the last few months and really 25 years. And I want to discuss it a little bit with you so that we as a people understand geopolitical things, what's happening around our culture and what's happening around the world. Now, Nicolás Maduro, who was the president of Venezuela, was captured. He, along with his wife, during these bombings, and he and President Trump have been kind of going back and forth regarding these, what's been happening because Venezuela been acting up. Basically, a lot of corruption that's going on there in the country. The people celebrated, actually, Maduro's capture. And the reason they celebrated is because they have been under complete and total control of the Maduro government, including corruption in the military, with they're being terrorized by these gang members, and they have long been really taking advantage of the natural resources, which is the fuel and some of the gold that's there in Venezuela. Venezuela used to be filthy rich. These people have been living under fear for 25 years since Hugo Chavez, and he left in 2013. Now, it is a communist country, and it used to be a very beautiful and rich country. In fact, Venezuela was one of the wealthiest countries in Latin America. It has vast oil reserves, but for like 25 years, they have been under sanctions from the American government because of their lack of control over immigration. So they don't vet people who come over to the United States. So it could be gang members, it could be people who have been in prison for taking other people's lives or for trafficking, people. So they were sending some very dangerous people into our country. And if we can't talk about these things and understand how a black neighborhood goes overnight, turns from a black neighborhood into a different neighborhood, then we have to understand what's going on with all of this. And it can become clearer now. Now, why were these people running away? Because this is how they was living. Y'all, the wealth that was generated from the substance abuse, the trafficking, gold and fuel smuggling, it did not trickle down to the people. And so the people are living in poverty in these neighborhoods, these barrios that were dangerous. They were, I mean, they would have blackouts. They wouldn't even have electricity. But on the top, oh, they was living really good. And we see this wherever you see failed states. And really that's what Venezuela is. You see what's going on with the Somali thing, and all of the corruption going on there. Y'all click down below. I want to thank you all for joining me and allowing us to speak around the world, as we are an intellectual people who tune in for Royal Black and Elite. We go beyond what we see in our own neighborhoods and see how the world changing and what's happening around the world impacts us. And you all, this is how socialism and communism have people living. Because it is easy to be corrupt when everything goes through the government. And it didn't matter if these people voted. It really didn't, because Caracas was where they did the strikes. Caracas was where the national government was, and so everything was corrupt there. So even at the local level, when people voted, once it made it to Caracas, all the votes would be changed, and that's how Maduro kept winning over and over again. Now, I just showed you the neighborhoods that the poor people were living in. Look how the rich people lived. They lived very well. So it wasn't that there was not money in the country. It was that the people at the top were stealing the money from the people at the bottom. Hyperinflation, sanctions, which mean they couldn't even get their everyday supplies. Of course, they were running away. You have Venezuelans in Chile and the United States, all over the world, trying to escape Maduro's his rule. So it was a reason why this was happening. Now, some people are saying that it was not legal what the United States just did. The United States have been going into other countries doing targeted strikes from the beginning of time, especially because they have been deemed a terrorist organization. Maduro was already he was already indicted in U.S. courts in 2020 actually. So he had him and several high-ranking Venezuelan officials, and this is he took over from Chavez, and of course Chavez took over, from Castro. So these people have been entrenched, for 20, 30, 40 years. Now Maduro is captured with his wife. He is now here in the United States. And they see that over 21% of their economy, the whole economy of Venezuela, comes from illicit activities. So America was not having it. Now stuff really started ramping up really this summer and going into what's happening now when they were doing strikes on drug let me say, substance boats that were in international water. And so you see these boats, and this reminds me of Bad Boy 2 when they were going in the water and they were moving the substances in this way. The United States government said, hey, you need to stop this, and if you don't, we will. And they didn't stop, so they began to, take them out. So it began to escalate and escalate and escalate. And Maduro finally was like, okay, let's talk. I'm willing to do what I need to do. All these, Chihuahua people that we're letting into the country will stop, this and that. But he wasn't serious. And the stuff that he was offering, the United States government did not agree with. Now, the most discussed phenomenon is the so-called cartel of the suns. And this is a term used to describe the alleged drug trafficking involving elements of the Venezuelan military and state and security forces. So that's the reason the United States did not believe that the Venezuelan government would really cooperate with them, because they have not been cooperating, and they're moving all of this stuff into the United States. In that 2020 indictment, the officials were indicted in the courts for narcotics trafficking, corruption, and conspiracy. So they've been wanted for a long time. We just haven't moved to arrest them, and now that has happened. So I want to thank you for joining me for another great episode of Royal Black and Elite. Congratulations to the Venezuelan people that if they were really felt they were living under this, that they're now free, and they're celebrating all over the world, even in Chile. The people who were from Venezuela, from Chile, they're even celebrating. So I'll keep you posted, see what happens. We don't know. Are they going to put somebody in there? Are they going to have elections? We don't know. They only got Maduro. So what happens to all of the other people who were corrupt who still left there? We don't know, but I'll definitely keep you posted. Now, click down below so you continue to learn about the Royal Black and Elite. I've got some great lessons. Listen, this is the same kind of thing that's happening over in Africa. Check it out. Ibrahim Traore and what he did with France and how all that happened. And it's kind of the same thing what America did with Venezuela. Traore said, we've had to stop this. Now, as you know, my lectures are always for educational entertainment purposes only, and everything is alleged. Everything will come out in court, so we'll see what happens. Now, I want to thank you for joining me for another great episode of Royal Black and Elite. Keep on kicking down below to continue to learn. Hit that like, share, and subscribe. And please tell me, are you Venezuelan? Tell me how you feel. We definitely have some in our family, so they're celebrating. And some people question, why does the Trump administration enjoy the votes of the Latin American community? And this is why. This is why. We don't always understand what's happening, but I'm glad that I was able to talk about it. Y'all tell me, how do you feel down below about what has happened? And I thank you for joining for another great episode of Royal Black and Elite. Don't forget, like, share, and subscribe, and keep clicking down below. That Traore video is down there. I've left a lot of great videos down for you to continue to watch. Thank you, and Happy New Year.